Today we're going to focus on centerpieces, and we're going to learn the difference between a mechanic and more of a structural armature. So the difference would be is if it is a mechanic, it's not meant to be seen. So there's lots of different things that you can use in the floral industry. This one is called a pillow. It's to replace chicken wire. So for the longest time in the floral industry, back to Constance Spry in the early 1800s, they used chicken wire to design in. Super cheap. You have this in your shop classes. You can use it. You kind of roll it, make a log or a circle, and then you can insert that actually into a vase and create it. So Holly Chappell, a designer in Virginia, was like, hey, we can do better. We can use reusable ones. So she made these little guys. They're about $1.67 each. You snap them together, they set and they fit in a vase, and then they become a mechanic. You can design through it, and it helps students understand kind of a grid and structure. The big thing with this is balance and figuring it out. But the nice thing is you can use these containers at banquet or prom. They can take the pillow out with the arrangement, take it home, and then you have your containers that you can keep. Another mechanic would be foam. So traditionally you've seen green floral foam. They now make midnight foam, which is a black foam, and it's actually meant to be seen and part of the design. So you could just soak it, drop it in a clear vase, and it adds a color or a technique. Another easy way is just tape, and I know that's kind of hard to see, but clear tape on a clear vase is a nice grid and structure that you can design through. So anytime that we say a mechanic or a structure, it's not meant to be seen. It's meant to blend into the arrangement and completely be covered. If you were like, I want something decorative, you would call it an armature. So then it would be meant to be seen. These are Oasis armatures. They're just wire with beads and stuff on them. You can set that directly on a vase, design through it, or make a bouquet. They have floral mesh, which they were like, chicken wire came back. Oasis said, how can we make more money? So they invented colorful chicken wire that's square. This is really pretty. You can do the same thing. You can set on it, create grids, structures, armatures, let it be seen. Negatives are when you put this in water, within like 2 hours, the color eats off of it and it turns your water to rust. So I would not suggest submerging it. Something that's fun, zip ties. I just zip tied around the cube. It still sets completely flat. Now it's a decorative armature that I've made a part of my design, and I can pull another color in. So it's easy to get school colors and different things with that. And then it's another foundation for them to design. And that's pretty much the difference between a structure and an armature. Today I'm just going to make a hand-tied bouquet and actually show you how you just use wire to wire it off. You can make it any shape and drop it in any of the vessels that you see that are up here or around that I've showed you. Or they can do the exact same technique but drop it in the grid. So everybody's a little bit different. The products that I have leather leaf, so you use it, super cheap, 45 cents a piece. I have lightly color enhanced it with rose gold to make it look prettier and more trendy. And now it's not as ugly sometimes. Our other greenery that we're going to use is Dusty Miller or lamb's ear. This is one that you could grow in your greenhouse. There are tons of foliages that you can grow, harvest off of, and use in your arrangements. Our filler flower today is wax flower. I went ahead and prepped everything so it's easier for you. My mass flowers are a single flower that can stand alone. So I have carnations, again cheap, and then I have roses that are pretty cost effective. My accent flower is going to be Lisianthus, which is a little bit more expensive, but there are a lot of different products that you can use. But an accent flower is when it has multiple blooms on each stem. That way you can get more bang for your buck. So again, I think this was 2 pieces and I've cut it into tons of little pieces. Another little accent is Salvia. You can grow this in your greenhouse. You can grow this outside in your landscape, harvest from it. I felt like I needed a little bit of dark purple, so I found some ranunculus and again split it. And we're going to use that just to fill in, and it would be considered a mass flower because it's a standalone flower. When we're creating centerpieces, I wanted to think of something that you could create in any kind of thing. When you start, traditionally you're going to start with a greenery grid. Whether you have a structural grid or not, you still want to have some kind of form for your students to design in. I'm taking my leather, I'm making it smaller, and like I said, I'm going to make this in my hand because most of you can design in a grid, so I wanted to show you the hand tied as well. Cleaning it up. If you have a student that's using foam, save all these pieces from the student that's doing the hand tied and let them use that to help cover your mechanics. So there's no waste. And I have 3 pieces, and I'm just trimming them down so they're more proportional. I'm going to use this white container, this stone, and it is about 4 inches tall. My proportion is usually 1.5 to 2 times the comparative size relationship between the container and the flowers. So I'd go 8 to 10. Because it's white, I can actually go a lot larger because the proportion when this draws our eyes in, it actually gives us a larger visual impact. So I could go 3 to 4 times as tall if I wanted to. I'm going to keep it tighter and smaller. And then when we create a greenery grid, we are going to lace, and lacing is the interweaving and locking of the stems. So we're going in from the front, over the bottom lateral, and pulling it down till it connects. And I did that on the left side. So I'm going to do it on the right side, same thing, in from the front, pulling it down, and we're making sure that all the pretty side of the leather is facing us. And then I'm going to start to add my dusty. Same thing, I'm weaving it, I'm lacing it. Since I have no structure or grid in this, any kind of mechanic, I have to make sure that my greenery is going to hold what I'm working with. Since it's a centerpiece, it's all-sided, we're going to make sure that we're turning it, we're spinning it, we're rotating it, we're balancing it and looking at it from all angles. When we're making these, we think about our elbow on the table, our chin on our fist, and that's about 18 inches, and you can see over it. So I know when I get done, if this is above my chin, not on this container, that I've gone too tall, because it's going to ruin my eyesight for a customer. I'll add a little bit of my wax flower. Again, same thing. This is going to be a radial placement, meaning everything radiates down into the center of my hand or my bouquet. And some of the wax flower, you can see I've used the bottoms, so I have another foliage. I'm using product that normally we would throw away and adding it in to give myself another texture and dimension. And making sure as I'm designing that there's going to be no foliage in the water. Foliage breeds bacteria. Bacteria decreases the vase life of your flowers. And then I'm going to start the blend with my Lesleighanthus. So I really start with a nice grid, a nice structure, so that's your filler flowers and your foliages. I'm going to add a little bit of my accent, so I start to get my shape, and then we'll add our mass towards the end because that's going to create a visual impact for us. Negatives of Lesleighanthus and Dusty are they naturally droop, so sometimes customers don't like that, or your students won't like that. And you'll just have to let them know that it just does that. And then you can decide, okay, do I want it to continue to be sporadic? So when I say sporadic, I'm really making a symmetrically balanced arrangement right now. It's the same on all sides. From here, what I could do is I could actually start grouping. And grouping is when we take like materials and we place them together to create a large emphasis area. Our emphasis area is what initially attracts our viewers' eyes. And when I do this, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to terrace them. And terracing is different levels. So think about terraces in fields. You see the movement through the field. We want the same thing in a bouquet because that creates rhythm. And rhythm is the visual flow or movement in our arrangement. So I could take these 3 roses and kind of add them in, terracing them, stair-stepping them. If I put all of that weight on one side, since it's a centerpiece, I'm going to bisect it. If I'm in my front left, I'm going to go to my back right. So I'm turning it around, doing the exact same thing with my carnations. The reason we like to do grouping in the floral industry is it's a little bit more modern. It's not as traditional, and it creates a huge visual color palette and then a larger impact for us when we look at it. So now, instead of polka dotting it, when I look at it from all sides, it's a lot more in our face. If I polka dot it, this contrast wouldn't be the same. This really makes it stand out a little bit more. Where I have my void areas, I'm going to use my Lesleighanthus to fill in. So some of these, when I'm designing, you'll see I'm going down into the grid. Some you'll notice I actually just take and lay up underneath. Not everything physically has to go into the grid to be structurally sound. I'm going to place my ranunculus kind of all over. It's really expensive, so I want to make sure that we see it from all sides. And that deep pop of purple pulls my dark purple, my light purples, and my medium purples together. So having those tints, tones, and shades of one color creates a really nice color scheme, and it gives us just a little bit more emphasis, honestly. It makes it a better cohesive arrangement overall. You can see I struggled just a little bit to get this down in there. Remember that ranunculus is super soft, so I gently kind of eased it down in there, tucking it in different places. And traditionally I'd like to see my smaller ranunculus at the top, bigger at the bottom. For the most part, they're all pretty small, so I'm kind of using them everywhere. And things will slide on you, that's okay. Just keep adjusting. My carnations have moved, I know that, that's no big deal. I'm just gonna keep shaping and changing as I go. And that's what your students will get the most frustrated about is, oh my gosh, I placed it and it moved. With a hand tied, you're holding it in your hand loosely, so it is gonna adjust, it is going to change. And that's okay, because we still have plenty of time to fix it and change it. Some of my materials are a little bit more loose and chaotic. That allows us to create just more rhythm. And I would say it really fits the theme right now, or feel in the floral industry, which is very boho, very natural, organic. And we don't want it to be super tight and a roundy moundy. I want to have some depth and dimension. I want it to be loose and free. And then I have my salvia, which is that dark purple. I can see when I look at this, if I cut it in half, I have way more shape and dimension over here compared to this side. Again, I'm going to counterbalance. I'm going to place it on the opposite side to help with that. And the big thing is I'm going to tuck it in a little bit tighter. So even though that salvia is really, really tall, I don't want it to look like antennas. I want it to be a part of the design. So we're placing it, tucking it in, and again, I'm going to group that. It's such a vibrant purpley blue. Stay together to create a nice emphasis. If I felt like I needed a little bit more wax flower, I can take it and place it underneath, blending it through. Look at the shape, the movement, change anything. I want that ranunculus tucked in a little bit tighter. Once I like it and I feel good about it, I'm going to take the bind wire, and all I did is I took about a yard of bind wire. I folded it in half. It's a really thin wire that's covered in paper, so when you drop it in water, the color doesn't come off. The water or the wire doesn't rust. I have a loop on the end where I folded it. My open end, so my two tails, I'm going to take through the center loop that I've made. I'm going to pull it and kind of cinch it so it gets tight. Tight enough it's holding it without my hands, but not so tight you break the stems. We will separate those guys, bring them around to the opposite side, and twist it like a bread tie or fence or whatever you can relate to. And then I'll make sure that it's structurally sound. I can clip that extra wire off, making sure that when I do, I kind of tuck those pieces of wire back up underneath so it doesn't harm my client. And then I'm going to make sure that it's proportional. When I go to cut it, what you can't see is on the back side, I'm really measuring it off the edge of my table of where to cut. Then I would take it and drop it in. So I can see that I didn't measure it correctly, it's falling. That's not structurally sound. We wouldn't deliver this to a customer, right? So I'd clip it just a little bit shorter and then drop it in. You could also take the bind wire off if you wanted to as you're dropping it in, because now that it's in there, it's structurally sound. You can still shape and adjust, but it's proportional top to bottom. It could be a little bit taller, it could stay short like this. And then if I felt like I needed anything else, if I have pieces that are long enough to go down into the water, which some of this leather is, I could take and add in and create just a little bit more rhythm. And that's just an easy centerpiece that you can make in your hand or any of the different types of mechanics that we showed you today.
To find out more about the Kaffner experience, visit our website, kaffner.missouri.edu.